Hi, my name is Rodney, and I'm here today to share my thoughts, opinions, and experiences with learning Spanish like crazy. So, first of all, let me give you a little background about myself. I've been uh, learning Spanish for about 20 years. I actually managed to achieve fluency, and I've even gone on now to teach Spanish and help others achieve their goals, whether that be achieving a certain level of fluency or just learning a little bit of learning a little bit of the language to enrich their travel experiences. Um, yeah. So now let me go into my experiences with the actual learning Spanish like crazy product, and actually the entire product line. I've been using Learn Spanish like crazy, versions 1, 2, 3, the new and improved version, the new Millennium version. So I have quite a bit of experience with the entire line of products. But I first started using them back in, I think it was the or mid, early to mid 2000s when the very first, Learning Spanish Like Crazy original version was released. And I'm gonna be honest, the the very first time I listened to it, I honestly didn't like it too much. Um, and I really couldn't tell you why, but I listened to it for just a little bit, and I put it away for quite a while, probably a few months. Um, and From what I recall, my learning really wasn't going that well. It wasn't going at the pace that I wanted. So I thought to myself, well, I paid for this thing, so I may as well use it. And it turns out that decision was one of the best language learning decisions I actually could have made. I started using the product religiously. And at that time, I'd begun to travel a lot to Mexico. So I was actually seeing the benefits of using the product, Learning Spanish Like Crazy, or LSLC for short from now on. So, like I said, after that, I was seeing the results of the product. Um, a few more versions had come out, Learning Spanish LSLC 2, LSLC 3, and yeah, I bought them all, and I was seeing huge benefit. And as I mentioned earlier, I could see this. Not this wasn't just in my head that I was seeing this benefit. I was actively traveling and speaking to people. I picked up the habit of having conversation with any Spanish speaker I could find, whether it be at home or abroad, and the product was working. Um, and I can honestly say, learning Spanish like crazy became it became my go-to product. It was the foundation of my learning. And in all honesty, had I not been using learning Spanish like crazy, I I really don't know if I would have ever have achieved fluency. I can't imagine myself making the progress that I made without without LSLC. But anyway, let me talk a little bit about what I think makes um, learning Spanish like crazy effective. For one, it's based on the listen and repeat approach. And if you've done any research at all into language acquisition, listen and repeat is it's really a highly favored approach. It's really recommended. And why is that? Because listen and repeat is very much like how you learn your native language, right? As kids, how do we learn the language? We don't learn by studying grammar books, right? We learn by listening and repeating the things that we hear around us, especially the things that we're not supposed to hear, much less repeat, right? So again, it's a very natural way to acquire a language. Let's see what else I have on my notes here. Yeah, the other thing is you're going to learn a lot of useful, and I emphasize the point, useful and common everyday vocabulary. You know, you can go to any YouTube site, you can go to any webpage, you can find tons of vocabulary lists. But the question is how useful and how relevant are they to, you know, to you being able to communicate with people? With learning Spanish like crazy, you're going to get that everyday vocabulary that Spanish speakers use. Um, Verb conjugations. This is the bane of every Spanish learner, or really every language learner, um, because there's so many verb conjugations, so many verb tenses. Honestly, it can become a nightmare. But with this particular product, you actually learn the conjugations via the conversations um, they use to teach you. So instead of trying to use old-fashioned rote memorization or flashcards, you're actually learning everything. Um, you're internalizing everything by hearing the conjugations over and over and over again. So, um, and more importantly, you're learning them through context. So to me, I consider that to be a much more effective way to learn. Um, Another thing that I didn't really understand or realize until many years later is that the organization of the material in in learning Spanish like crazy is very well thought out, very well organized, and it's presented in what I believe to be the most logical order to maximize your learning. One example of that is in learning Spanish like crazy, you're taught the command conjugation forms before you're taught the subjunctive. Why is that? Well, it's not something they chose to do by, you know, randomly. You learn the command verb conjugations first. Why? Because the subjunctive conjugations are nearly identical to that. So again, you know, everything's been well thought out to really help maximize your learning, but you know, maximize your learning. And the other benefit that I really like is that you're actually using the language as you go about learning. You know, you're listening, you're speaking, you're practicing your pronunciation. All of this is very important because for many people, you know, they either don't have a very good language learning approach or they don't have an approach at all. And the first time they try to put sentences together is when they're trying to have a conversation. And that's really not the most ideal way to go about it. So, with learning Spanish like crazy, although you may not realize it at the time, this listening and repeating, you know, you're putting sentences together and you're getting that verbal practice that you need, which is really going to benefit you when the time comes to go out and actually have a conversation or even just say a few simple sentences to someone. Um, but yeah, the kind of those are the major points as to why I think learning Spanish like crazy is really an ideal product. Um, you know, there's an expression, many paths, one summit, and in the context of language learning, what that means is there are a lot of products that can get you to fluency or to reach whatever your goal is, but not all of them do it in the most efficient way possible. So those many paths I talked about, some of them are a lot smoother, and some of them can take you out of the way and can be a much steeper climb to reach that summit. But I honestly believe learning Spanish like crazy is going to take you up that path. Yes, it's going to be a little difficult to climb that path, but it's the path of least resistance, and it using this path, um, in my opinion, is the best way to get you to the top of that summit. There are very few learnings. First of all, let me back up. There's a ton of learning Spanish products out there, the majority of which I think are average and don't really give you your return on investment. But learning Spanish like crazy, I believe it does give you that return on investment. And I say that because, again, I've been using their products for years. Um, I recommend their products to all of my students. And yeah, I just think it's money well spent. So if you are serious about becoming fluent in Spanish, or whatever your end goal is with learning Spanish, I think learning Spanish like crazy products are definitely the best route to go about that. And I'm just going to wrap it up here. And I hope you find this review of some benefit. And good luck with your studies.